They say time heals all wounds, but I've always known that's a lie. Time is a thief, a vandal, a slow rot that eats away at everything beautiful. That's why I learned to respect it, to study its patterns, to master its secrets. In my line of work, you have to. People bring me their broken clocks, their chipped watches, their family heirlooms with faded engravings and cracked glass. They want me to fix what time has ruined. I do, of course. I have steady hands, a patient mind, and a love for precision. But what they don't realize is that I'm not just fixing their clocks. I'm learning from them. Every gear, every spring, every tick and tock. Each one is a lesson in how to make a moment last forever. I've always been careful. That's the first rule. Careful with my tools, careful with my words, careful with my movements. I wear gloves, always. Not just in the workshop, but everywhere. Leather in winter, thin cotton in summer. I never leave fingerprints, never drop a hair, never let a single fiber escape my notice. I keep my shoes clean, my clothes plain, my face forgettable. I blend in. I watch. I wait. People think evil looks like something out of a movie, a wild-eyed maniac, a shadow in the alley. But real evil is patient. It's methodical. It's the man who holds the door for you at the bank, who nods politely in the elevator, who fixes your grandmother's clock and never charges too much. That's how I move through the world. Invisible, unremarkable, safe. But I'm not here to talk about safety. I'm here to talk about perfection. About the moment when everything aligns, the light, the air, the heartbeat, the silence. That's what I look for. That's what I collect. I don't choose my subjects at random. I watch them for weeks, sometimes months. I learn their habits, their schedules, their little rituals. I know when they leave for work, when they come home, when they water their plants or call their mother. I know which window they leave open at night, which door they forget to lock. I know the exact moment when they are most themselves, unguarded, unaware, alive. That's when I strike. Not with violence, not with rage, but with precision. I enter their world as quietly as a shadow, as gently as a breath. I bring with me a clock, always an antique, always wound and set to the second. I find the perfect spot, the place where the light falls just right, where the air is still and the world is silent. And then, when the moment is right, I stop the clock. I stop them. I leave the clock behind, its hands frozen at the exact time their time ended. I never rush. I never panic. I never leave a trace. The police call me a ghost. They say I'm a myth, a story to scare children. They don't know how close I've come to them, how many times I've walked past their desks, smiled at their wives, fixed their watches. They don't know that I keep a record of every moment I've collected, a ledger of perfection, a gallery of stillness. But lately I've felt something shifting, a tension in the air, a sense that the world is watching me more closely than before. I've noticed unfamiliar faces in the neighborhood, cars that linger a little too long at the curb. I've heard questions whispered in the shop, seen the way people glance at my hands, my gloves, my eyes. I tell myself it's nothing. I've been careful. I've always been careful. Still, I can't shake the feeling that time is catching up to me. Last week, a woman brought in a grandfather clock for repair. She said it belonged to her late husband, that it hadn't worked since the day he died. I listened to her story, nodded in all the right places, promised to restore it to its former glory. But as I worked on the clock, I found something strange. A fingerprint, faint but unmistakable, on the brass pendulum. Not mine, of course. I never leave prints. But it made me think. Even the most careful hands can slip. Even the most perfect moment can be ruined by a single mistake. I doubled my precautions. I checked every tool, every surface, every inch of my clothing. I watched my subjects more closely, waited longer, moved slower. I told myself I was untouchable, but the truth is, no one is untouchable. Not forever. There's a house on the edge of town, white siding, blue shutters, a porch swing that creaks in the wind. I've been watching it for weeks. The woman who lives there is a creature of habit. Coffee at 7, yoga at 8, work at 9. She leaves her window open just a crack, enough to let in the morning air. She reads in the evenings, always by the same lamp, always with the same book. I know her routine better than she does. Tonight is the night. I've chosen the clock, a delicate silver carriage clock, French, 1890s, the kind that catches the light and holds it. I wind it, set it, polish the glass until it gleams. I slip on my gloves, check my pockets, count my steps. I move through the darkness like a memory, silent and invisible. The house is quiet. The world is still. I let myself in, careful not to disturb a thing. I find her in the living room, lost in her book, the lamp casting a golden halo around her head. For a moment, I almost hesitate. Not out of fear, not out of guilt, but out of admiration. She is perfect, suspended in time, exactly as she should be. I do what I came to do. I stop the clock. I stop her. I place the clock on the table, its hands frozen at 9:47. I leave as quietly as I came, closing the door behind me, erasing every trace of my presence, or so I think. The next morning, the news is everywhere. Another mysterious death, another antique clock left behind, its hands unmoving. The reporters call it chilling, the police call it impossible. They say there are no leads, no witnesses, no evidence. I watch the coverage from my workshop, sipping coffee, gloves still on. I feel nothing. Not pride, not fear, just the familiar satisfaction of a job done right. But as the day wears on, something gnaws at me. A detail, small but persistent, like a grain of sand in a watch's gears. I replay the night in my mind, every step, every breath. I remember the clock, the gloves, the door, the silence. I remember wiping the table, checking the doorknob, scanning the room for anything out of place. I remember the way the lamp's light caught the silver clock, the way her book slipped from her hand and landed on the rug. And then I remember the window, the one she always left open, just a crack. I'd closed it behind me, careful not to leave a trace, but as I picture it now, I see it clearly. The thin line of condensation on the glass, the faint outline of my gloved hand. I'd wiped it, of course, I always do. But what if just this once I missed something? A smudge, a fiber, a print pressed through the thin cotton of my glove. I tell myself it's nothing. I've been careful for years. I've never made a mistake. But the thought lingers, heavy and cold. Days pass. The police come to the shop, polite but persistent. They ask about clocks, about repairs, about customers. I answer every question, my voice calm, my hands steady. They leave, but I see the suspicion in their eyes, the way they linger on the shelves of antique clocks, the way they glance at my gloves. That night, I can't sleep. I lie in bed, listening to the tick of the clock on my nightstand, the slow, relentless march of time. I think about the ledger in my drawer, the list of moments I've collected, the gallery of stillness I've built. I think about the woman in the house with blue shutters, the silver clock on her table, the window I might have left imperfectly clean. The next morning, they come for me, not with sirens or shouts, but with quiet certainty. They search the shop, the apartment, the workshop. They find the ledger, the gloves, the collection of antique clocks. They find a single cotton fiber on the window of the house with blue shutters, a fiber that matches the gloves in my drawer. They find a partial print, blurred but unmistakable, pressed into the condensation on the glass. They ask me questions, but I don't answer. There's nothing left to say. I watch the clock on the wall of the interrogation room, its hands moving in slow, perfect circles. I wonder if they'll ever understand what I was trying to do, if they'll see the beauty in a moment perfectly preserved, a life stopped at its peak. They don't, of course. They see only the aftermath, the emptiness, the fear. They see a monster, not an artist. They lock me away, far from my clocks, far from my moments, far from the world I tried to perfect. Now, in this small, silent room, time is all I have. The clock on the wall is broken, its hands forever stuck at 3:17. I stare at it for hours, willing it to move, to mark the passing of another perfect moment. But it never does. Time at last has stopped for me, and I am left with nothing but the silence and the knowledge that even the most careful hands can slip, just once.